right in his career.
I hate to say it, we got to lose soon. Because otherwise it becomes just this huge monkey on your back, right? Everyone's going to be talking about how long can they go. It's a 82 game season. We ain't going undefeated. I had to shut some of that down on the Twitter because, we got them crazies on the Twitter, the same ones who think the Browns are going to go on a 8-0 run and finish the season 10-7 are predicting the Cavs are going to go 82-0. I'm like, stop. I don't know what y'all are drinking, but you need to check your ID at the door.
I would love some of that. I would love some of that.
It's crazy.
By the gallon full.
Yeah, but they just look really good. I'm really happy with what coach is doing. This 10-man rotation they got that he is sticking with, it's working, and it's keeping them rested. We took in that Milwaukee game, we were down by 15 points. We were on a back-to-back. They had the night before off, and as the game progressed, you could see that their players were getting tired. They had like 3 players doing all their scoring, and we were like everybody was doing our scoring. And this rotation that he's got going on, I really like. I like what it's doing so far this season. They are notoriously awful and on back-to-back games, especially on the road. So I am super excited for what I've seen so far. Eventually, they're going to lose a game here and there.
Of course, they're going to lose.
I'm predicting 60-22 for the year, but that's just me.
But I'm going to keep on riding it. I mean, we all know that the team that stands in their way is the Boston Celtics, who have been defeated. So that's the team that stands in their way. But, this team can be competitive against them, which is something that they weren't in the, the series against them, at the end of the season. But there were a lot of injuries as well, too. So we had a lot of people hurt, even Donovan as well. So, that's something that we can worry about next year in 2025 come April and May. We don't have to worry about that right now. Right now, we can just enjoy, and have fun with what the Cavs are doing. I'm liking, the fact that Darius Garland seems to be back. I guess one of the things that he had said was when he got that money, he didn't enjoy basketball anymore. Well, if you don't enjoy basketball anymore, what are you doing out there? Well, let's take that money back and see how much you enjoy it then. But, I'll take
Rachel, Rachel, I think it is so kind of you to offer to take that money off Darius's hands so that he can get back to loving basketball and not have to worry about it. It is I know how you will suffer having to do that for him. Yeah. But I know your heart, you are that kind of a giving person that you would be happy to do that for him.
Absolutely. I'd be more than happy to take $200 million off his back. That's life-changing money. I can help, take care of Cleveland Kate. I can help take care of my family.
You can take care of Darius too, right? You can take care of him. Whatever he needs, he just come to you. You'll handle it.
He got enough already. He got enough.
But he don't have to manage it. He don't need that stress.
Yeah, he good. But, I'm liking the way he's playing. He's playing lights out on offense. He's playing defense. He's doing the dirty work and getting in there. So I'm loving his play right now. Ty Jerome has been a surprise, pick up from Golden State, what he's been able to create offensively for this team, and coexist and blend together. So I'm liking what Ty Jerome is doing. At first, I didn't know what Ty Jerome looked like last season because he was injured. So I didn't even know what he looked like. So when he got on the floor, I'm like, that's Ty Jerome. Oh my God. I didn't even know because he had been hurt. So, I'm liking, what he's bringing. And, probably, Kenny Atkinson knew what Ty Jerome could bring, since he had been with Golden State and as well as Kenny too. So he probably knew what type of player Ty Jerome really was. So he's been able to work him in, really well into his system.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I know it's early, but that's usually when you see rust, when you see teams trying to figure out what their identity is going to be, when you see players trying to learn to play together. And I think these guys have gotten off to a really good start, a good solid start. And I don't see that change and I don't see that falling off, as we get a few more weeks into the season. So I'm super excited for Cavaliers basketball right now.
Yeah. What do you think about the development of Evan Mobley so far?
Well, I mean, it's just been insane. I expected more of this last year. When you
Mhm.
look at scoring, Donovan's clearly our leading scorer, but Darius, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett, and even Levert are right there behind him. You go from 24 to like 18, 17, 15. Those are solid numbers. And for Mobley to be averaging almost 18 points a game with, and he's getting 30 minutes, they're managing his minutes, but his field goal percentage is at 56. He actually has a better field goal percentage from shots taken and versus made than Donovan does. Like it's amazing to me that it's not that his offensive game has improved so much because he could always play defense, right? In year
Mhm.
two, his defense was just insane. But he needed to work on that offense, and clearly he did because he's very balanced right now, and he wasn't balanced in prior seasons.
And this is what we have been looking for. This is what we have been asking out of Evan. This is the jump that we were looking for, last year. He's still a work in progress, obviously, still with the footwork, want to work on, him turning his back away from the basket and not traveling. So he's still a work in progress, but this is some of the improvement that we were looking for. He put on a little bit of weight in the
Yep.
off season, and he can, he's ready, he can body players a little bit. He's worked on his jumper. I still don't need him taking, a bunch of 3 pointers or anything like that, but
Yeah.
this is an improvement that we wanted to see with Cavaliers basketball.
I mean, he's hitting 90% on his free throws, but he's only taken a few of them, and his 3 pointers in much better. But he's still getting 8, 9 rebounds a game, and that's
Hmm.
huge. You worry that if he starts to focus on the offense, and now he's up to 18 points a game, that you're going to lose that defensive presence, and you're not. He's second only to Jared Allen in rebounds for the team so far. So again, balance, right? I'm still getting the rebounds that I need from him. He's not getting into foul trouble. He's putting points up, and they're watching his minutes, so he's able to contribute and to stay. All of them are watching their minutes. I don't think anyone's getting over 30 minutes a game. Like him and Evan and Donovan are both averaging 29.6 minutes a game. That's huge. That's
Hmm.
huge that you don't have. I look at the Milwaukee Bucks stat and they got 3 guys in 40-minute times. It's like you're going to get tired. You're going to wear out. If this
Hmm.
bench, this overall team, this 10-man rotation that Kenny's got going, if he can continue this, you're going to, I predict by, what is today, November 3rd, November 4th?
Today's November 4th.
I predict
Tomorrow
that
is
by
November
December,
5th, election day. Please get out and vote.
just go
That's the
vote.
PSA.
I don't care who you're voting for. Go vote. Make your voice heard tomorrow. I predict that by December 1st, you're going to see a whole lot of teams trying to run a 10-man rotation. And
Hmm.
I don't know if any of them have the talent and depth that we do to sustain that the way Kenny's doing it. You can bring guys in off the bench for a couple minutes, but when your bench players are getting 10 minutes, that speaks to your development of your players and your depth, and you can do really well. You got one superstar, we got maybe 2 superstars, and then we got like 7 guys that are right in the middle there. But if
Hmm.
they're all getting their minutes, those points are still points, right? I will take
Hmm.
that every day.
That's what
I will take
Boston
that
got
every
though
day.
too.
I have my
Boston got
issues
two
with JB.
superstars,
I was
huh?
not always happy. I was not always happy with JB. I have my issues with them. I didn't know what to expect when Kenny Atkinson came over here. So far, I'm loving what I've seen. We'll see. I know they're winning, right? So it makes it easy to go,
Hmm.
oh, he's doing a great job. Everyone loves him. They're winning. Even if they weren't undefeated, I still like the way he is setting the tone with this team for this season. So I'm on board. I'm on the A train, the Atkinson train. We're gonna call it the A train.
Yeah, yeah. I think, one of the things is, at the end of the season last year, the team, it wasn't that they hated JB, it was that they were stagnant and they needed something new. They needed a different offensive identity in order to be able to move forward. And I guess they just weren't liking what they were being a part of. So, they felt it was necessary that, a change to be evident because it's just like, okay, well, this team performed well under JB and they improved every year and JB was still let go. So, now you're seeing that, you know, uh, Kenny Atkinson, he came from Golden State, kind of the Golden State way, run and gun, put up a whole bunch of not free throws, but shoot a whole bunch of threes and have a little bit of a different offensive opportunity identity, run things through Evan, run things through your bigs, Friday night, Jared Allen only had 2 points, but he still was effective inside the middle. And that's what you need. Let Evan go ahead and get those points and things like that. Get those points, get that experience, and be that, I don't really consider him a power forward, be that forward that you need, and this team they can go further at the end of the season, I believe, because I believe that they're going to win over, I would say, 52 games.
Well, and it helps with the rough spots, right? We've seen those rough spots in the past where somebody gets hurt and you lose Garland or you lose Okoro or you lose LeVert or you lose Dean Wade. You lose one of your key components for a stretch of games, and there's that hole that you don't know how to fill. When you're running a 10-man rotation like he's doing, you can fill that. You can fill that gap. Everybody gets a couple more minutes, and we're running 9 now, right? It's a lot easier to get you through the rough patches when you're missing somebody with this system that he's running. And I saw a couple of his interviews this week. I like, how he talks about he needed to go to Golden State. He needed to leave Brooklyn. Is that where he was? And he needed to go learn again. He needed to go back and go up. And the lessons he's learned, he's putting into effect now. I think one of the things for me that comes to mind when we talk about JB is I run through my head the definition of insanity, trying the same thing and expecting different results. There are times when people will say something to me and they'll say it and they'll say it and they'll say it 5 times. And I heard it and I interpreted it the way I interpreted it. It was not the way they wanted me to interpret it. It was not what I heard, was not what they said. But they don't try different words. If they get to a point where I'm like, listen, I need you to say that to me again and give me different words, they come at me with different words and I'm like, oh, okay, now I know what you mean. My bad. Right? I was out on the back porch one day and I asked my grandson to open the door for me so I could bring in a tray of stuff, and he opened it like this far. And I'm like, open the door. And he's like, I did. I'm like, no, open the door. And he's like, I did. And I went, open the door wider so I can get. He was like, oh, he had no idea what I was saying. And I think JB struggled with that with this team. He kept saying the same things to them and trying the same things, and they didn't get it, and it wasn't resonating. And you bring Kenny Atkinson in, he's got a little more experience with different teams because JB been here forever, right? Even before he was head coach. And sometimes when you're in that same mindset, you need someone from the outside to come in and say the same thing in a different way. I bet you were there. There were times where your mom told you something and you didn't listen, but when your auntie told you the exact same thing, you listened to her. You know what I mean? It's that same kind of thing. You hear it coming from a different voice with some different words, even though they mean the same thing, you react differently, right? So I think this talent is the same as we've had in prior years. I just think Kenny has a way of approaching them and game planning that rings differently, and we're seeing the effects in Undefeated.
I was a good kid, Kate. I always did what I was told.
I'm sure you were a good
So we're going to go ahead and take a break really quickly. Kelsey Russo, staff writer, the Cleveland Browns, is going to join us on the other side. We're going to be right back. You are listening to Her in the Huddle on WOVU at 95.9 FM. We will be right back. All right, welcome back to Her in the Huddle on WOVU 95.9 FM. Make sure you keep it locked here on your regular radio dial at 95.9 FM. Make sure you download that WOVU app so you can listen to us on the go. And also, you can listen online at WOVU.org. It is me, myself, and Cleveland Kate, and we have Miss Kelsey Russo joining us. She is the Cleveland Browns staff writer covering that team that we have in town that we are trying to make sense of. And Kelsey, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We're doing good. We're so excited to have you today.
Thanks for having me on. I know it's been a minute since I've been on the show, so it's good to be
It
back.
would be better if we could have you on a Victory Monday, but
True. I agree with that.
Yeah, we're not having that. So Kelsey, let's start with the good. Okay, so what was working for the Cleveland Browns yesterday? You come in this scenario where, you beat the Baltimore Ravens, you beat one of your division foes, you beat Lamar Jackson, something that's so hard for us to do. You have all this drama with, Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson goes down, with another season ending injury. You have jobs on the line. You have a locker room that might be slipping away, from Kevin, and they come out and they win this big game, and all seems right in the world again, even though they were 1-6. So 2-6. And you got the LA Chargers coming into town. I always mix up the Harbaugh brothers. Was this Jim Harbaugh or John that came into town? Jim?
this was evil Harbaugh.
Yes.
Okay, this was Jim
Former
that came
Michigan
into town.
Harbaugh. It doesn't matter which one.
Everybody was thinking that we could win this game coming off of the high that we had, from the last game. But once again, this is the Cleveland Browns, who a team that is unable to string wins along. What was the good that happened yesterday before we get to the bad?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of things. There were pockets throughout the game that I did think they looked really good. The protection from the offensive line and how they kept Jameis Winston from being sacked a ton. Defensively, they had plays where they looked really good. I mean, Miles had 3 sacks, in basically 4 plays, and they were able to apply pressure to Justin Herbert, which I think was really important. They needed to be able to do that, and that was going to be key in this game from the beginning, because coming into this game, the Chargers weren't the biggest pass game team. And so having to force him into those situations was going to be kind of crucial. So applying any sort of pressure was going to be part of this game. So I really liked that aspect of it. I thought we got to see, another game for Jameis. Obviously there were those miscues, but at the same time, you got to see how he was able to march them down the field, get to those end zone or get into the red zone and get into those situations that I think was really important just for the offense to see, like, hey, this is how we can move the ball, use the run, use the pass game, be able to create that balance and be able to find success in different areas. So I think there were pockets of things that were good. It's just now stringing it together to get a win.
So what's frustrating to me is I'm a stats girl. So when I look at the stats, we had the ball for almost 10 more minutes. We had 8 more first downs. We only had 4 penalties. Thank you, Jesus. We only had 4 penalties. We had 96 return yards, like all of these awesome things. And that score isn't even as reflective as how badly they beat us. Those 3 turnovers, you can't turn the ball over in your end zone, let alone the red zone. Those 3 turnovers are killer. And what are we going to do with Jameis? Is this a Jameis issue? Is it a receivers not running their routes issue?
It's a great question. So it was kind of something we talked about after the game yesterday. And, it was just a couple of moments of miscommunication where, so it's not necessarily just Jameis issue, and it's not necessarily just a receiver issue. It's working through that rhythm and that consistency of having Jameis at quarterback, and I thought it was really interesting what Jameis had to say yesterday after the game. That first pass, he said just needed to be like 2 feet higher, and it would have been good. And just some miscommunication on the reads and the routes. And that just, I think, comes with time. As yes, you get practice time, but being in a game, being able to react to what the defense is doing against you is going to allow these guys to find that consistency and that continuity. And Jameis seeing the field, seeing what his guys can do, the routes that they're actually able to run against what the defense is giving them. So and then at the same time, the receiver group is still kind of working through the targets that Amari Cooper had, so they're being distributed between all three of them. And then there's sort of that distribution that's still part of this. And so, Cedric Tillman's getting more targets, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, and that's part of it, of just building that chemistry with Jameis in a game situation. And then when you're facing, again, a Chargers defense that only gives up an average of 13 points is a challenge from the beginning, and they knew that. And so that was going to be a factor in this game as well.
Yeah. Everyone was so excited after the Ravens game with Jameis and the receivers and all that. And I'm Polly positive. I'm Penny positive. I'm Super Bowl or bust girl, but I have been very cautious this season. And I tried to remind people that Ravens game, it's almost that some of these divisional games are so different from all the rest of our opponents. I said, and now what you have is, I think, one of the issues with the way Kevin Stefanski runs practice. Jameis didn't get reps with the ones when Deshaun was healthy. And DTR isn't getting reps with the ones when Deshaun is healthy. And then once they named Jameis the starter, he's only had 2 weeks of actual full practice reps with the ones. You're right. It's going to take a little while for them to work on that communication and chemistry. But I would love to see a little bit of DTR at some point. Is he getting any reps at all in practice? Do you know? And are they working on any packages for him to kind of slowly give him some exposure?
I wouldn't be shocked if at some point there are those packages for DTR, just kind of, I think, like we saw early on in the season, those packages for Jameis on those, those QB sneaks, those short yardage. And so
I love those. And I said to Rachel, those set up a pass. Mm-hmm. Like if you do a couple of those, the next time he comes in, they're all lined up with 10 men in the box. And that's when he's like, RPO, step back and throw it, because there's nobody left. And they haven't done it yet. And I guess they can't now that he's I was waiting for the trick plays and we didn't get one.
I know. I honestly had that same thought too. I was like, oh, maybe this is something, but not necessarily that particularly, but I think there is that opportunity for DTR to be used in certain package situations. I feel like we saw that I can't remember, this is just me trying to remember from last year, that he was in some of those situations last year as well. And so I would say that I do think there's an opportunity. I think part of it is they're also just trying to get him healthy at the moment, working through that middle finger injury, and just kind of giving him time. But I think you have a really good opportunity here. So yes, Jameis is your veteran quarterback. He's been in situations. He can be that kind of sounding board and that veteran presence to lead this offense. But then you allow DTR to get reps, to get those opportunities to help build him up, because he came in last year and was kind of all over the place because of the situation of played in some games, didn't play others, was starting a game, not playing at all. And kind of building those opportunities for him, I think, is going to be really important. And so when it comes to practice, yes, Jameis is taking those first team reps because he needs those, honestly, in this situation, because like you said, he hasn't had those with this group, a ton with this group. And so, but there's an opportunity for DTR to be on the sideline, pay attention, be asking questions and learning and taking reps behind Jameis, so then he can be ready to step in as that second QB and really be more prepared than necessarily being behind both Jameis and Deshaun when he was healthy.
Yeah, I love me some DTR. I loved him in college. And when we drafted him, I was so happy. I have a DTR jersey, and the last jersey I bought was Kellen Winslow Jr. So I don't know if that's going to be a bad omen or not, or if that just tells people how old I am. That was my last
DTR jersey. You never told me that.
I do. I'll wear it next week for you, and you can see it. I do have a DTR jersey. I love the timing of the bye, even though I hate going on a bye after a loss, because we're going to dissect this loss for 2 weeks. We have a bye, which I think helps Jameis. And then we have New Orleans, who fired their head coach today.
Yeah.
I'm feeling good about our chances.
I am cautious. I am just a cautious girly. That's just who I am. But I think this bye is coming at a really good time for the Browns. So when you look at just, I mean, they've played 9 games. That's a really long stretch, but it's honestly a really good halfway point in the season for them. So you come back, you have another 8 games, and it's a chance for them to really have a good base for them to dissect, to work through, to like be okay. Let's self-evaluate. Let's look at what's good, what's bad, what can improve on all 3 sides of the ball. And I thought it was really interesting today. Kevin Stefanski was talking about how like that's really their goal this bye week is they're going to dissect everything. They're going to look at what's gone well, what hasn't gone well on all 3 sides of the ball because they need to perform on all 3 sides of the ball for them to be successful. But it's also a chance for these guys to like rest, take a breather, kind of work through those like lingering injuries that you're kind of just dealing with as the games keep going and you just kind of have like, oh, I'm fine. Like it's not really that big a deal. This is a time for them to truly get a break to let their bodies heal. So I think coming out of the bye is going to be really good for them to sort of reset their like, their minds, their bodies, etc. And then yeah, you're coming against a Saints team that's going through a lot of change at the moment. And that can be a good thing. That can you don't know what it's gonna look like, but it's an opportunity for them to take advantage of it, go on the road, get a win, come out of this bye week in a really good spot. Because and I thought it was really interesting today, like Rodney McLeod was talking about, like they still have a ton of belief in what they can do. Like, yes, an outside perspective, I think feels pretty dire, but they are trying to keep a very positive perspective on the season and that, yeah, it sounds cliche, but one game at a time. And they go win one game and then they move forward. But that one win can do wonders for morale and then just feeling that you can build off of that success. And so, like kind of like you're saying, I really do think this bye is a great time for them to just reset, recalibrate, come back refreshed, and be ready to knock out this last 8 games.
Jim Schwartz has 2 weeks to game plan for Alvin Kamara.
Mm-hmm.
Take your time. Exactly. And again, as much as I hate a loss going into the bye, you've got the Ravens film and now the Chargers film, and you've got 2 weeks, and there's plenty of good, bad, and in between in those two. They're two very different games on all 3 sides of the ball. Really, mm-hmm. We returned a lot better this week. I love me some Corey Bojorquez. I don't know how to get him to be the player of the week. I don't know how we need to get like a trophy for the best punter because MVP. Dude, mm-hmm. He is unappreciated. I think I do a podcast with the girls from Archer Football, and that's all we've been talking about. We're trying to find punter stats because the punting has been, with all these new kicking rules, the way they have to think about it and put it in a box and do all these things they didn't have to do before. He has been amazing. I'm going to like send him a candygram or something. I'm just, I love me kickers.
Yeah, he's great. And I mean, you think about it truly, like he's put them in such good, like put opposing teams in bad field position. Basically, I think of that Jaguars game where he pinned them at like the 2-yard line, 1-yard line. Like there are so many instances this season where he has been so good at giving his defense a really good starting position and putting opposing offenses in a bad field position. And like that is so important. And so, yeah, he has truly been like kind of an unsung hero in a sense, but like has played such an important role on special teams, and just for them to be successful in that area is so crucial. So he plays a really big role.
Mm-hmm. You know, Rachel, if you let me talk, I'll just keep talking to girl all day. If you want to say something, it's a K thing. If your name starts with K, you like to talk about football, and so it's just a thing.
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take a break. Kelsey's going to be with us on the other side of the break, so we're going to take a break, and then we're going to answer some more questions because that's what she's here for, to talk, everything Cleveland Browns with us. So we're going to be right back, Kelsey and Kate. You're listening to her in the Huddle on WOVU 95.9 FM. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Her in the Huddle on WOVU and 95.9 FM. This is your girl Rachel Hill, the First Lady of Sports, and I'm here with Cleveland Kate, and we have Miss Kelsey Russo, Cleveland Browns staff writer, with us here talking all things Browns. And Kelsey, I wanted to ask you about play calling. So, you kind of had a great game against the Baltimore Ravens, and then yesterday it was terrible. So at this point, I know it's just 2 games, but does it matter who's really calling the plays? Because right now, Kevin looks like he doesn't know what to do with himself on the sidelines right now. Does it really matter who's calling plays? Because yesterday was just god awful too.
Yeah, it's an interesting. Honestly, I saw that yesterday. A lot of the conversation was that really a big change? And I don't necessarily think it matters, because at the same time, like, this was the offense that they instilled when they brought Ken Dorsey in, was between Ken and Kevin, and kind of what they merged together. And so it's always been really collaborative between the two of them. And even when they're calling plays now, it's still been very collaborative. So when Kevin was calling plays, Ken would give him suggestions, maybe like, oh, hey, here's something I like on third down, or here's a suggestion of what I'm seeing. And then Kevin would make the final decision on the play call. But then on the flip side, now that Ken is calling plays, Kevin is still kind of in his ear, giving him suggestions as well. And it's that collaborative process. So I think part of it, it's still I think they're in this transition period, because not only is Ken kind of getting back into that role of calling plays, having that control of the offense, but then you're still also working through exactly what you can do with Jameis, because the offense does look different than when they had Deshaun Watson out there versus then what Jameis Winston can do. And so you want to be able to tailor your offense to what your quarterback can do. And I think that's part of this, is they're trying to work through of not only what these defenses are giving them, but then the strengths of Jameis, the strengths of this, receiving core, where their running back room is, where their tight ends can provide as other pass catchers. And so it's kind of this combination. So I think it's kind of still a work in progress, unfortunately. And because you've made this change at this point in the season, it's also still going to take a little bit of time now that you're transitioning to a different role, because Ken is now up in the box calling the plays. Kevin's on the field helping and being collaborative, but not making the final decision on the play calling.
Yeah, I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's funny. Everyone thinks Jameis is so old. He's only a year older than Deshaun. It just feels like he's been in the league forever, because he came out with Marcus Mariota and there was all the things. And then I was laughing during the Ravens game because he came out and threw a touchdown, and Mariota got the start for his team and threw a touchdown. I'm like, oh, they're both back. It's like tweets from 2016 or something. Any word on this offensive line? We have been rotating people in and out and around and in positions. And I think Dwan Jones played about all the positions, and Teller, and you've got healthy people that are back. Do we like the line the way it was this week? Do you think they're going to play around with it and move people around a little bit? Has there been any indication of that yet?
Yeah, so actually Kevin said today that he's going to keep Dwan at left tackle. So I think they were really happy with, he started 2 weeks there. And while there's obviously places for him to improve, and they know that, Kevin wants to give him that consistency of starting at that position and being able to grow there. And I think that is going to allow them as a unit to really create some consistency, because you have guys back, Wyatt Teller's now healthy, you have guys, you can create that consistency. I think they've had 8 starting offensive line units like over the season, which is just crazy. But now that you can kind of have some consistency there, that will allow them to help create the protection necessary to keep Jameis, from getting sacked. And I think over time, you're going to just see, like, if you are starting at a position and staying in that position, your sole focus is going to be there versus, okay, I need to adjust to this position and this position. I'm moving from left to right, and there's weird differences, even though it's the same position, but you're flipped. And so there's that consistency is going to be a really important factor, I think, not only for Dwan, but as a unit of knowing who's on your left, who's on your right, and being able to just support each other in that way. So I think that's the biggest change right now.
Yeah, it reminds me more of, I'm a big hockey fan, and they have, lines that come out, and these 3 guys go together, and the offensive line is a unit. And I try to explain to people, they're like, well, the most important thing is like the quarterback and his wide receiver and how they connect. And I'm like, no, it's those 5 guys from the center, the tackles, and the guards on your line. Because if you move me from left to right, it doesn't seem like a big change, except now I have to know what these 2 guys are doing. Before I knew what these 2 guys were going to do, you have to, I don't know if y'all are too young. When my kids were little, they had these little toy snakes where the links were all connected. And if you wiggled the tail, like the front of it did this, and that's what your offensive line is. And you have to get a feel for like the no look pass, the where is he going to step? Am I going to step on his feet? Why did he go back when I went this way? It's so complicated. And I love to watch that when I watch film and when I watch games to see how they're moving together. And they need time to play together to get that. And when you've had 8 different groupings, even if it's the same people, you need time. Mm-hmm. I know Rachel just rolls her eyes when I talk about the offensive line. I talk about the offensive line all day. The most important 6 inches in football are that is the line of scrimmage and the guys that are playing on it. And that line has to be able to play together and know. It's what Joe Thomas did so well. You could put anyone next to him and he anticipated where they were going to go and he protected his quarterbacks. And we need to develop that with this line because we have good individual talent. And this is a situation where 5 can become 6, if you know what I mean. You have 5 people, but they can be like a 6th entity when they're moving together. I'm sorry, Rachel. You know how I get.
It's okay. Is DeWand okay? Because wasn't he injured yesterday?
Yeah, he was dealing with a shoulder injury, but Kevin wasn't concerned about it. I think it was just kind of he went back in towards the end of the game, and so I think it was more of just like in the moment was dealing with it. But yeah, he seems to be good to go.
Okay. And what are your thoughts about defense yesterday? There were a couple, busted coverage plays, almost the same exact play. And, Denzel said you could blame it on me, but I look at it as a team game. One, I don't know if it was him that stopped running with the receiver. I think on that first touchdown, if you guys know what I'm talking about, how they stopped running. I don't know if that was Denzel that did that, but I look at this as a team game, and it all, they need to communicate and talk with each other, and that wasn't being done, I don't think, or it wasn't being done to the best of their ability. But there was some busted coverage that they have to work through and improve upon, and hopefully they assess that and dissect that during the bye week.
Yeah, 100%. And guys talked about that last night. Of there was some miscommunication on those plays of just kind of again just blown coverages, and that they took a lot of responsibility for it after the game of realizing like that can't happen, especially when you're playing in that man-to-man one-on-one coverage. That's something that can't happen, especially when you're in those situations. The other part too is they gave up a lot of explosive plays, and so while they were able to, the defense was able to limit their success on third downs, which really was really crucial in this game. But on the flip side, then they would get that third down stop, and then they would give up a 21-yard, run or that 17-yard pass. And so there were these big plays that really changed the game. And so that was kind of a couple of things that they talked about after the game of not only the missed coverages, miscommunication, and then not being able to stop those plays. That's something that they've dealt with kind of all throughout the season of being really good in moments, but then also giving up explosive plays. And those explosive plays, either they turn into a touchdown or it puts them up in really good field position for then a touchdown at the end. And so you can't allow those explosive plays to add up because you're putting yourself in a bad situation, because then, you're thinking, I think about that 66-yard pass that Herbert had for the touchdown. And I was like, that, again, was just a blown coverage, but that explosive play was really detrimental. And those are the ones that you have to try to eliminate where you can, and then being able to stop them on those third down situations is going to be really important. So some good, some bad, especially though, but I thought it was really important after the game, like, Denzel talking about it, Greg Newsome talking about it, of just taking responsibility for those miscues and knowing like that is where they need to improve, because in the secondary, like that's your job, is, you're lined up with those receivers in one-on-one situations and you have to bring them down. And they knew that was coming in those moments because that's just how Herbert was going to play the game as the game went on. And that's something that they have to be really sound in moving forward, of knowing when those opportunities are coming and being able to anticipate that moving forward.
You used one of my favorite words when you described the big plays, detrimental, because it's mental. Sometimes that 17-yard play, you can still maybe get a stop, but the fact that you blew that coverage and gave that up gets in your head. The other team gets super excited and juiced because they just had this big play. And the mental aspect of those big plays can sometimes hurt more than the actual yards, especially on a 3-and-1, even sometimes on a 3-and-1, and they get 17, and you're like, it's not even bad enough that you got the first down. It's that you got all those yards. It's so detrimental is the word I use always for big plays, because it's of the mental aspect of it. I absolutely missed JOK yesterday. I am blown away that they're not all they're saying is neck injury, but they put him on IR. And I get privacy laws and HIPAA and all that. So I am just going to hope and pray that he's okay. And once he sits his weeks out, he comes back again. But I feel like they missed him yesterday.
I think I agree, because he plays such an important role in that defense, not only holding the green dot, but like the way that he is a leader for that defense. And so you have guys that are stepping in. Like I do think, Mahmoud and Winston Reed did a really good job of being able to step in. But obviously you are still missing a caliber player in JOK, somebody who is really solid at his role. And so you have guys that are filling in to the best of their ability, but also they're young, and JOK has that experience. So you miss the anticipation that JOK has. You miss just his presence, the way that he is a leader for that defense, being able to, call plays and be in that huddle the way that he can be with that green dot, those privileges and everything. And so they definitely missed him. And but those guys I definitely know, I was impressed the way that Muhammad and Winston Reed kind of bounced back, and were able to fill in those roles.
And they know he's going to be out for a while now. So Jim Schwartz has 2 weeks to coach them up as well. And hopefully the injury isn't one where he's like in a hospital or off doing rehab. He can still be in the facility. Hopefully he'll be talking to those guys and mentoring them a little bit too. So they got 2 weeks to kind of figure out. But again, it's working together in the consistency and the other defensive guys trusting them and what they see and what they're calling, because they are so young. So I think that's the big takeaway for me, Rachel, is this bye could not have come at a better time for everybody. And I love that. I feel like we have kind of a soft game. Saints are going to give us everything we can handle, but there's some turmoil going on down there. And so I think, are getting them at the right time, because when they win the first 2 games this season and I'm looking at the calendar, I'm like, oh, we're going to need that bye to get ready for the Saints, because they're going to be 9-0 and they've lost every game since then. I don't know.
Yeah. So Kelsey, tomorrow, I guess there's something going on tomorrow. Some stuff going on or whatever.
Is there some voting thing or something? I know there's
yeah, and the trade deadline too.
Yeah.
So
there's commercials or things in the mail or random text to my phone from numbers I don't know when they're going to do something like that. Rachel?
Yeah, so there's some stuff going on tomorrow, I guess, or whatever. So all we keep hearing is Za'Darius. What is going to happen with Za'Darius?
Oh, that is the question of the day. And I wish I had an answer for you. It's going to be a really interesting next less than 24 hours at this point, because he's had such a really good season, and so I understand why teams are calling about him, especially teams that need somebody on their defensive line. His sack production, the pressures that he's given this season. He's played a really important role on this defense, and he's also on a really friendly contract in a sense of it's 2 years. And so you have this year, then you have next year. So a team that trades for him, if they do, is getting not only the rest of this season, but a whole other year as well of production out of him. And I think it makes sense why teams are calling who need defensive line help, And so I don't know. It's interesting. It would make me very sad if it happened, because I do love Z. He's a great person in the locker room. He's really easy to talk to. He's he's a joy, and so it would be sad from my end and a personal note. But it would make sense that the teams that are looking for help are calling about him. But I will
And
be
they're
curious
good
what happens.
teams. Like I'm hearing the Lions have made a couple calls. Like I'm with you. I don't want to lose him, but if I have to lose him, like I was so excited that Amari got to go to the Bills. I'm like, good on you, dude. Went somewhere good. Like, don't trade him. Don't trade Z to like Carolina, but like the Lions, dude, could get to the Super Bowl with Detroit. Like, they're good teams coming at him, which means they're going to be offering us something good in return. I don't know that we need any single person or position. Like, I don't see the Browns making a deal to get something because I just think what they need is too much. One person's not going to be the difference right now. Not when you're 2-7. But I don't want to do a fire sale either. I don't want to give up Z. Because you're right. With Deshaun's contract and their salary cap situation, you want to keep a friendly contract.
It's a tough spot. It's definitely a tough spot. And I think, at the same time too, it's like, not only are you thinking about the rest of this season, but you're also thinking about the future. And that plays a big part in this, as well as when you are negotiating trades of like what this looks like. And so, part of it is at this point, like, do you look more so towards the future versus the rest of the season? And that's a tough place for players to be in because they want to win games. Obviously, that's what they want to do. But part of it also is thinking at the future. And so it all kind of plays factors into this, and as Andrew Berry and this front office is going to do their due diligence in taking those calls, because that's what you do, at the trade deadline. Something I learned when I was at the Cavs is everyone said that you take those calls, you listen, whatever. It doesn't mean anything one way or the other, but it's important to listen. And so you hear what they have to say, and then you can make the decision on what you think is best for your team, because at the end, as well, not only are you're trying to do right by your players, but you're also trying to improve your organization as well. And so that plays a factor in all of it.
I feel like Andrew Berry, the last few years, has done right by some of the players that he's let go.
I knew you were going to say that.
I know you. I don't always love the decision to let them go, but I feel like he's done right by them. I'm thankful. I probably shouldn't be. This upcoming draft, I do a college football podcast, is not quarterback heavy. It's not friendly if you're in the top 5 and you desperately need a quarterback. And I don't think we'll be in the top 5, which is good. Love to get my hands on Travis Hunter, because who wouldn't? Yeah. and I hope he wins the Heisman. Sorry, Cam Ward down in Miami, but it don't have to be a quarterback every year. It can be someone who plays another position like cornerback and wide receiver at the same time in the same game. Love me some. So when they start offering draft picks, and my usual mind goes to, okay, can we bundle those up to get up to number 1 to get a quarterback? I don't have to do that anymore. And I don't want to do that for this year's draft. So I'll just be curious if they do move him. Very curious to see what that team came up with that made them say yes.
Yeah, me too. It's as I've been kind of tracking everything, because I'm curious. Like, I'm just very curious on how this is all going to play out. I'm like, you just see like different packages. I'm like, that's interesting. Okay, and then like just kind of storing that knowledge away for the future.
Yeah, I see a lot of things on social media from like Diana Russellini and Adam Schefter and all them of, I hear this team called this team about this player, and they do all of that like this week. Do you find any value in that? For me, it doesn't help me to know that we asked this girl out on a date and she said no thank you. Like, I don't care who you tried to get and didn't get. Do you find any value in that? Is it like a poker game and they're throwing things out there so that teams will jump in and go, oh, I better call before somebody else? I don't get it.
It has, I think, I don't personally see a ton of value in it, but I think that's also coming from my perspective from the team side of, I can't totally do anything with it. I'm like, okay, it's interesting. Like, I keep track of it, but I do think it does kind of, helps show the market for these guys. And so if teams are calling about a certain person, it might interest other teams. It might kind of put somebody on their radar that maybe they weren't necessarily thinking was either maybe available, or, because not all the time is it made clear who's available. Not teams are like, oh, we're, this guy's up for grabs kind of thing. So like those conversations, like, and when they get out there kind of do help spur the market. And so I think that does play a factor in all of it but you hear it a lot this week, but it's also interesting. It's like, it's so condensed to this time, but it's also part of the conversations that are happening literally throughout the year. It's just like, this is when people are really just very honed in talking about it. And as you know, the season's going on, things are happening. It is obviously very like prominent because people, they are going to make trades, they're going to make moves because of certain situations of either injuries or their teams are doing poorly or whatever. You know, you're having to make some decisions about your team versus, you know, in the off season, early on, whatever, it's more casual conversations that you're having. These kind of end up being more serious in that sense. And so I think that's why you also end up hearing about it, because it has more of a serious tone per se than, you know, a casual conversation in July or, you know, in the off season kind of thing.
Oh, we've seen coaches having conversations at the combine. And listen, I understand the idea that if a team calls you, listen. But if I'm working for the team and the words Myles Garrett come through the thing on the phone, click. I don't even need to. No, don't even need to hear it. To me, I don't know about you, Rachel. To me, he's like the only untouchable person on that roster right now.
Yeah, he's untouchable.
He's untouchable. I'll listen to offers for everybody else, but I don't even listen for Myles. And he got 3 sacks yesterday. I was so excited.
I know.
I was so excited.
And it was funny because it was like, as people were talking about how like, oh, he's, you know, has only 4 sacks on the season, blah, blah, blah. He is also was like, he was leading, or he was 3rd in the league in pressures. He had 41 going into yesterday's game. So it's like, he's still having the impact, having a big impact on the game. It's just not coming in sack numbers because teams are double teaming him. They're taking him out of these games because they know who he is. They know he's a game wrecker. And so they're game planning for him. And then the fact that you're still having all these pressures in games is just showing how dominant he is. But yeah, the 3 sacks, I was like, that had to feel pretty good to, you know, go from 4 to 7 in one game and just be able to like,
just to remind people who he is. Cause you're right. I hear that from a lot of people. They're like, oh, we'd like to get our hands on Myles. He's not having a good year. And I'm like, no. He's not getting the sacks because he's taking these 2 guys out of the equation so someone else can get through and get the pressure and get the sacks. If you don't watch what he does in film, you don't understand the huge impact. Because you're right, they have to game plan for him. And if they take 2 people to take him out, that frees somebody else up. And there's value in that. We talk about that with receivers too. If you got a double team a receiver, that leaves somebody unguarded. So those are things you have to watch to see it. It's not always reflected in the numbers. So that's just why I was like, oh, he got some numbers this week. So, because I don't know if he has an incentive contract. I don't know if he's got to have certain numbers at the end of the year or if they recognize what he does it has value without getting numbers.
It's a great question. I don't actually know that. So I would be curious.
Yeah. I'll go look it up.
Yeah.
Well, Kelsey, you stay with us longer than we planned before we let you go because we only got a couple minutes.
I will talk to you for another hour if Rachel would let me. But
I'm here for it.
We appreciate you. You mentioned about being a beat writer for the Cavs with The Athletic. Thoughts on the Cleveland Cavaliers and what's taking place with them right now?
I'm loving this stretch. This is so fun. I mean, it's so funny being like not being a beat writer anymore and being able to watch the games, and not that I didn't enjoy it, but like enjoy it as a fan. And so that's been really fun. I went to the Lakers game, which was so fun. Yeah. And so this stretch, it's been cool to watch their evolution over this stretch. You know, when they were under JB Bickerstaff, they played a certain way. They're playing a certain way now under Kenny Atkinson, and it looks so different, but it works for them. And so it's cool to see this evolution, see how Darius Garland's grown, how Isaac Okoro's grown. I mean, Donovan is Donovan. Evan Mobley. Yes, Evan Mobley looks like he has changed as well. He's really grown into who he is. So it's just all these pieces really coming together. So I've really enjoyed it. I think it's crazy they're 7-0. I'm excited for this Bucks game tonight. But it's been cool to watch, and to see them flourish the way that they are has been cool to see.
Yeah, I think
it is very different to watch a game that you're covering versus just watching a game to watch the game.
Yes.
I'm got a chance to see them grow.
Very different.
I said Chelsea got a chance to see them Kelsey, I'm sorry, I said Chelsea. Kelsey got a chance to see these players grow as well too. So
Yeah, so it's like 4 years. So
mhm.
Evan was drafted when I was there, and Darius was in his first year, and so it's been
Oh,
cool to
wow.
see. Yeah, it's like
Evan's
I
game is
watched
so
them.
balanced right now. We were talking about that right before you joined us. He always had that defense, and now that he's got some offense, his defense is
Mhm.
still just as good as it was. And that balance, he's most improved player. We're loving our Evan Mobley right now.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Donovan hit his first game winner the other night, so the good on him. So looking
I couldn't
forward
believe he
to
hasn't
him.
had one.
Yeah, I know,
I know.
right? It
I
took
couldn't believe
7 years. I think this is his 8th year in the league. So, it took LeBron a while to hit
it.
his first game winner too. So, it just
Well, because
takes a
LeBron
minute.
was very good with the assists. He would throw it to Kyrie Irving and let Kyrie sink it. He probably had game-winning assists more than game-winning shots with his career. And I think Donovan's a little like that. He looks for the assist more than just taking the shot.
Yeah, well, ladies, that's our time. Kelsey, I just want to thank you so much for coming on today. How can people find you, read you?
Yeah, so everything is on clevelandbrowns.com. And then my Twitter or X is Kelsey Y. Russo. So everything is also on there. I'll tweet story links and updates from games and everything. So those two places, everything is at.
Kelsey, thank you so much for spending a lot of time with us. We definitely appreciate it. For
Of course.
Cleveland Kate, for the First Lady of Sports, you've been listening to her in the Huddle on WOVU 95.9 FM, and we are out of here.